Have you ever said this out loud or to someone else and genuinely felt that when you've had a challenge or you were presented with a problem, that you have to figure it out? Like if it was a math challenge, right? Like if you had a very long math equation and you had to find the answer. Well, in today's conversation, I'm going to show you how there's absolutely nothing to figure out ever, and why phrases like these actually perpetuates the challenges that are arising for you, and how it actually blocks the solution from finding you. So this is a coined term that I've used time and time again myself. I've learned it from others, obviously, just like you have. If you've ever used this term or you've ever felt this way, that when a problem or a challenge arises, that you have to figure out what the solution is. But then I learned something, and I thought that it was really cool because it actually relieves you of ever having to solve your own problems, because the solutions will always come to the surface once you let go of taking responsibility for having to figure anything out. And I'm going to show you why that is. So, remember what I'm telling you. There's nothing to figure out. However, you do have some responsibility in your own problems and your own challenges. Here are 6 questions, or rather 6 words, to questions that will arise when you have a problem. Okay? Usually, when you're looking at a problem that you are trying to solve, here's your 6. What, who, where, why. I believe you know where I'm going with this. When, and how. Now, here's something that's very key, is that you actually want to utilize each one of these questions when it comes to identifying the solution to any problem that you have. And I mean any problem that you have. Now, I don't mean that you should use these questions to further understand the problem itself. I mean, you pretty much know that there's a problem, right? It's what's the problem? Who's responsible for that problem? Where did it occur? Why is it happening? When is it going to end? How is it going to end, or how is it going to get solved? These are not the questions that I'm telling you to pose to yourself, because in fact, that actually continues to perpetuate the problem. Anytime that you continue to think about a problem, talk about a problem, remain on the same frequency of the problem, you cannot find the solution. And I spoke about this in a piece of content that I made yesterday on my Built by Community Fitness channel, as well as a piece of content that I did on this channel as well yesterday during my webinar, right? I often use a battery as a symbolism, an analogy for the way that frequency works. Now, in life, which is the battery, okay? Battery is life, okay? There's always going to be positive things and there's going to be negative things. And our job is to stay right in the middle and to be neutral about all of it, because that's life. There's nothing that you could do without it. There is no one that has ever lived or walked this earth and has never experienced both a positive and a negative perspective or experience in life, because that's not how life works. In fact, we actually need negativity to even acknowledge and realize positivity, because of the laws of polarity, which says there are equal and opposite reactions, right? So this is really, this might be hard to accept when it comes to challenges, but think about day and night, right? The sun and the moon, right? Up and down. These are concepts that we will accept for anything else. But when it comes to experiences, it's harder. Why? Because we're filled with emotion. That's why it's harder, right? So if we're talking about day and nighttime, we necessarily may not be filled with significant emotions with just speaking about it or experiencing it, right? If we're talking about hot and cold, we're not going to have as vigorous emotions that's running through us when we're speaking about it. Maybe some of us, right? Like if you're in the Northeast right now, you know what's going down in terms of the weather, okay? Most of us are waiting for the weather to break here in New York and that we can finally experience some relief from the bitter coldness. But there are people who choose to live in cold weather most of the year around versus not, right? So it's always about perspective. Think about that, right? For those who can't stand the winter, hate the winter, right? There are some people who love the winter, who love the cold, and who would prefer to actually be in those cities that are colder, right? Because it's always about perspective. It's always preference. And most of the time, we always are going to prefer what we like versus thinking about a challenge as something that we prefer and like. I say all that to say that it's important that if you are experiencing something that you consider negative, when you continue to dwell on it by ruminating and thinking more about the problem that you're considering negative, including even when you just talk about it, right? Now, I am neither here nor there on venting. However, I know for myself, it is not something that I do very often unless I'm in a space where I just want to hear if a solution comes through another person because that is possible. But naturally, just complaining or venting with another person who is also going to join you here is not helpful. Okay. But if you are constructively speaking about something like to a mentor, a coach, or a parent, a guardian, someone that you trust that has been through a similar experience and maybe can give you advice for you to consider, that's different. But venting typically is not that. So, or at least that's not like how a lot of people look at it. Maybe you do, and if you do, that's cool because that can help you get back over here. But most of the time, we just want someone that can understand, right? That can relate. We need to talk about something. I highly recommend journaling instead if you're looking for another outlet that will not perpetuate the feeling and the thoughts that are already taking place in this space. We feel negative emotion vigorously, and if we allow ourselves to continue to stay there, well, then the universe, the same laws of polarity that I just mentioned to you, it has to give you back what you are. And so, what you are is made up of a bunch of emotions. So, what you're feeling is the universe giving more of that feeling, more of that situation, even more of those thoughts, right? That's why it's called a train of thoughts. Like you can go down a rabbit hole thinking about how bad something is. Well, the universe is going to help you out and give you more things to think about that's not going to feel really good, all because you are deciding to stay on this plane. Okay. So, in terms of these 6 words, when you are asking yourself the questions to the solution, okay, then you want to use these words, not to the problem, because it helps you perpetuate that, like the examples that I just gave you. So instead, you want to use these 6 for the solution. And it's really important to know what I'm about to tell you next. Okay, solution based answers. Oh, questions. While you can use any one of these 6 to help you to figure out a solution, right? Although remember what I told you in the beginning, there's nothing to figure out ever. But we're human and our minds are designed to think, right? That's its job. So let's say you actually need a solution quickly. And it can be helpful to ask one of these questions. And if you do, maybe asking, what is the solution that I need? Who can help me right now? Where do I need to go to find this kind of help? Why is this solution important? When does it need to be answered? How is it going to be solved? These can be helpful in a moment, especially when you need a quick solution. Okay? Now, let's say you're in a scenario though where you can't answer most of these. Like maybe you do really need to know a when or a who or a where, or these are things that you're thinking about and you actually have no response. Like, I need $1 million right now. Who can I ask for $1 million? You're probably not, most on average, most of you are not going to have the answer to that question, especially if it's a need, right? Not want $1 million. I need it. I need it right now. I need bail money. Who can I call, right? God forbid, for any of you, including myself. Okay? Who can I call? Crickets. There's no solution, there's no answer, right? Instead of panicking, having an anxiety attack, freaking out about what the solution is to that problem, who can help you? When are you going to be able to get this money? Where are you going to be able to get this money, right? You don't have the answers to that. You already know. And there's no amount of thinking that you can do that's going to help you, and you know this. So, it is really important that you quiet your mind and allow yourself to answer the only 2 questions out of these 6 that you can actually pose the solution to. So I gave you 6 words, right, to ask open-ended questions that'll help pose a solution for you. But the best part about any of this and why there's nothing to figure out ever is because you're only responsible for 2 out of these 6 anyway. Can you guess which 2 that would be? I'm literally giving you a moment to think about it. Which 2 would it be? I mean, we just went through a couple of questions for a scenario that is a pretty significant deal that people do deal with in real life, right? It doesn't have to be your personal situation, but that's a legit question, bro. I need bail money and it's a mill. Who got a mill for me? Where am I going to get it from? How am I going to get that kind of money? When will I get that kind of money? Right? You don't know. But think about that. You don't know. You don't know this. You don't know who's going to give you that money, where it's going to come from, how it's going to come, when it's going to come. That's 4. I told you you're responsible for 2 out of the 6. So which 2 is it? The only thing that you should know or should figure out, and I use that word lightly, should, okay, is what you want and why you want it. Why? Because in any situation, any problem, any challenge that arrives, you will always be able to figure out those answers. Know what solution you want and why you want it. In fact, you almost automatically know this based on the fact that you prefer for whatever experience that is happening for you right now to not happen, right? If you have a problem, if your car breaks down, what's your preference? If you needed bail money, God forbid, what's your preference, right? If you were locked out of your house, what's your preference? To be inside, for your car to be fixed, for you to be out of your situation if you ever needed bail, God forbid, okay? So you already automatically know what you would prefer from experiencing what you don't prefer. This is not even something you have to figure out. You already know. Like it naturally comes to you. The one that typically requires a little bit more focused attention is the why. Why do you want that? Now, for a lot of situations, those may be very obvious as well. Why do I want to be not locked out of my house instead of locked out of my house is pretty obvious, right? But most of us want things like wealth. We want a relationship that's healthy and feels good to us, right? Especially a romantic relationship that's healthy and feel good to us. And inexperienced one that's not healthy and doesn't feel good, you know what you want, but why do you want that instead? This is important. You know why? I'm gonna tell you why. Because the universe is going to conspire to get you what you want based on why you want it. It's going to be the universe who takes on responsibility for these other four questions that arises, and that's why it's not your job to figure out any of these. It's not your job to figure out when you're going to meet the love of your life, how you're going to meet them, who it is, and where they are right now. The universe got you. That also is a law, a principle, law of attraction. Under the law of attraction, you call in what you want, and the universe is on point. If you have the answer to this, forget about it, right? Sometimes we want a car really bad, and then you get a used car, and that used car is breaking down every other week, right? You just spent all this money on a used car, and now it's breaking down every other week. It's like that's a bigger problem than not having the used car at all, right? So you want to be very specific even with something like that. Like, I want a car. You think that that makes sense. You want a working operating car that's going to get you from point A to point B. But let's be honest, you buy a used car off the parking lot. I've experienced this in my household, and those cars don't function well, and they constantly have to put money into it, taking it to a shop to fix it. And so it ends up costing more for fixing it than it was in purchasing it to begin with. So wanting a fully function operational in mint condition used car, if that's the route you're going to take, is the specifics that you want to name as a part of the what you want and why you want it. Why? So that I don't have to spend endless amount of money trying to fix the used car, understanding that sometimes used cars have more problems than they do solutions, right? They add more problems than they do solutions, because I want to be able to get from point A to point B in time, safely, right? With cost effectiveness, right? With time efficiency. These things are important, y'all, because you know how I say the universe is listening? It's like it's listening based off of our energy. So when you immerse yourself into the whys you want something, you start to feel it. Remember, we talked about feelings and we're made up of emotions. When we are emitting the frequency of the feelings of the why rather than just the what, these two together, it helps to move us to that positive end of the spectrum. So if maybe right now, I really wish I did have a car, right? And sometimes I do personally. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to continue with that analogy. Like, I have a big dog, y'all know, right? I have uh, a Shepherd Doodle mix. She's 90 pounds. Aside from getting to the vet, I want to get to the groomers, and I can't just hop on the bus with her, even here in New York, nor hop on the train. Okay, so I prefer to be in a car, and I currently don't own a car. So I don't even want a car, by the way. So now my solution that I think about, what would be my solution? My solution would be to have enough funds to be able to take an Uber, right? Or to have some other type of ride or vehicle to which I can go at any given point in time if I need to be able to commute with her. Why? Right? Why would I prefer that? Well, I would prefer that because it's it's cost effective, right? It's comfortable, right? These are things that I know, and when I think about that, I can think about the times where we have been in a car before, and so I know that feeling very well. Or I can imagine what kind of car, right? Even that matters. What it would be like Mamba in a sedan versus in a Jeep or a Caravan is very different, right? Her being in a space where She feels safe while we're riding in the car is very different than her just sitting in the back seat. Like she doesn't like that. She would prefer to be either very close to me or in I know some of you might know if you are a dog owner, you know this where they have like those little, I don't know, it's like a bed kind of lounge thing that they can sit inside, so that they could feel safe. Like dogs actually would prefer a smaller confined space for safety than a very large open space in a moving vehicle, especially adult dogs. So that's important, right? So when I think about that and I envision what that is for her, that's what I'm calling into our experience. And that makes me feel good because I know it'll make her feel good. And now it takes away from anything other than that that I could possibly think about that would be a problem or a challenge for us. So I know what I want, I know why I want it, and so do you. You know the answers to these. Maybe you need to embellish this one a little bit more. And if you do, it'll give you the frequency of this. And when you're in the frequency of the solution that you prefer, that you genuinely want, it's already on its way to you. It is only when there is doubt and uncertainty, when we believe that there is something to figure out. But when we have already accepted that these are our only two responsibilities and that we typically don't have the answer to these up front, that we're going to rely on our hope, trust, and faith, right? Sometimes people are like, yeah, I hope I can figure it out. Well, if you're going to use the word hope, you actually need to live in that. And if you're hoping, you're going to allow yourself to figure out these, and you're still going to allow the universe to conspire and collaborate with you to figure this out. So sometimes you don't know who the who is that's going to help you, and the who just shows up. Somebody you know, somebody you don't know. Could be a straight up stranger. The when, you definitely don't have the time frame, or else you probably experience so much relief if you knew the time frame, right? Even when it's cutting really close and you're like, oh my god, I only have 24 hours. Still, I only have 24 hours to figure this out. You can't. If you're here, you can't. The solution and the problem lives on two different ends of the spectrum. You can't do nothing but to know these two and to stay there and allow the universe to figure everything out. It has the most responsibility and it's equipped for those responsibilities. That is its job. That is the law of attraction. It already knows how to do these things, y'all. So there doesn't need to be this unnecessary doubt, fears, uncertainty, or just rumination, anxiety. All of these things, they do not have to exist within your body. In fact, you hearing this message clearly, hear me now. If you allow it to perpetuate, that's when things continue to be hard. We suffer just in our mentality, much less what we're experiencing outside of ourselves. We can suffer right within ourselves. But you have control over yourself. So why not solve that? which you do have control over, instead of any part of a circumstance that you don't have control over. And with that, my friends, I hope you've realized today that there is nothing to figure out except for what you want and why you want it. I'll see you in the next one.